All right, Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. This is going to be a full 3X pitcher evaluation. This is for the 3X pitcher evaluation report that you can gain access to perform your own 3X pitching evaluation. We're going to cover basically the two pieces to biomechanics analysis. That is a section in our pitcher evaluation. First, we're going to cover the red flag alerts, anything that we have linking to arm injury or potential, not just arm injury, potential injury in the pitching delivery. And then we'll go into performance potential, anything we feel as a link to added performance in the delivery. So let's first walk through these red flag alerts and see if we see any issues. And like I said, this is coming out of the 3X pitcher evaluation report. So this is a PDF book that's going to define all of the red flags. So I'm not going to be defining them here. I'm just going to be going through the delivery of Kevin Schultz here, and I'm going to be pointing out his red flags, okay? So let's take Kevin and do his leg lift here. All right. So one of the initial flags we look for is in the drive leg. Okay. I see coming out of his lift leg, he's using an extended lift leg pattern, which we define in the 3X pitching program and in the evaluation report. We don't see I don't see any red flags in the drive leg as far as loss of torsion, which would create a valgus stress in the knee. The arm is not going to lead to a problem either. We don't see any early cocking at this point. I'd say the drive leg is clear at this point, or cleared. Let's move into front foot strike. Here's Kevin at front foot strike. Okay. He lands in flexion. So I don't see any overextension of the leg, which could cause some hip and back problems. So I'd say his landing leg is cleared until, let's take it all the way to pitch release. Don't see any overextension either, so lift leg is cleared for injury. Or also too, we look for that valgus stress that's cleared. Let's look at the hips and back. Like we said, that usually links to the landing leg. The landing leg looks cleared, so the hips and back look clear. Yeah, I guess the hips and back is cleared. Let's look into glove shoulder. Do we have an over-aggressive glove side? Not really. So the glove shoulder looks clear. Let's look at the throwing shoulder here. All right, so he gets into, he's got a good arm path, no hyperabduction at front foot strike, no hyperangulation during rotation. We see even good shoulder abduction going into external rotation with trunk tilt. So the throwing shoulder is clear up to the point where we haven't gotten to internal rotation. So that was the only thing that I pointed out. So basically this far we've gone through this injury report here and we have no red flags. Pretty much everything has been cleared. But if we look at from maximum external rotation into internal rotation, we don't see a lot of internal rotation, and then immediately goes into the arm continues across the body, and we see the shoulder blade kind of go into some protraction, or just an indication that maybe this blade is flying out because the arm didn't really continue into decelerate into internal rotation. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for coming out of that external rotation, and as he explodes into internal rotation, I like to see a hard break into internal rotation where the elbow stays high and the hand really breaks down, good internal rotation pronation. That's healthier on that scap, because if not, like I said, then you're going to see the arm extend across the body like that, and then that's going to really put a lot of stress on that scap. Even though his trunk is in a good position to help decelerate that, but as you can see that kind of hump right there, it just tells me that there's a lot of tension at that point, and we really don't want too much of that. So something that I would indicate could be a potential red flag or injury, meaning like if over time that could just be, it's already a lot of wear and tear, a lot of stress. Over time, the wear and tear could catch up quicker with that kind of arm action. But that could improve too through the season, because he's in an off-season training program. That could improve through the season, as he becomes a little bit more fluid or synced up, and maybe even a little bit more less forcing his delivery, more relaxed, just because of more reps applied. So could change, something to monitor through the season. So that'd be the only issue I'm seeing, is that lack of internal rotation following pitch release. Also, too, if I don't see the arm breaking into rotation hard after pitch release, it could be late pronation or causing late pronation, which could then put stress on the elbow over time, and that affects performance as well. But we're going to get into performance after this. So it's the only red flag I ran into. We went through the drive leg, front leg, back, glove side. Everything cleared until about IC, internal rotation. Okay, so that's about it. That was the entire delivery for all of our red flag alerts. Only thing I found was in the throwing arm pitch release. Now, Kevin's been working with me for a long time, about a year, so we've gotten a lot of his problems out. If I went back to his video a year ago, it'd be a big difference. So he's not really a great example on nailing all these red flags. So he's actually a good example. So he'd be someone to follow as a good example. All right, so let's get into performance potential. We'll start back from the leg lift. Okay. All right, so let's take him. Now we're looking purely on performance. How can we help him improve performance? Now, Kevin on his best day is 91, so that's going to be his max. So not going to be consistently in a high velocity category, which would be 90 plus. So he's going to have a lot of performance potential. Most guys do. All right, so let's take him into his leg lift. I like how he leads well with his hip. He starts shifting his momentum early. He does use that extended lift leg pattern, which the only negatives we want to make sure is he getting down the mound fast enough with that extended leg. And he is, so not worried about that there. Now how well is he loading his drive leg? I like his forward movement. So, I'm looking from the hip positions to move forward and down at the same rate, which will get him that linear force vector before the lift leg wants to open and start rotation. So you can see right here, before he starts to open and start rotation, we've got a fairly decent force vector. Okay, or I would say fairly decent. I would say very good force vector. The only thing I just don't like, knowing Kevin doesn't have a lot of dorsiflexion, doesn't have a lot of ankle power because of his lack of mobility. So he's got to get a lot from his knee drive, and he doesn't have a lot of knee flexion at this point. So that's a concern. That would definitely be a big area for improvement in performance. He needs to have more flexion. So if this was his movement forward and down, right here, then he probably should have been more like this, a little bit more down as he moved forward. Normally it's the other way around. When I see a lot of low velocity guys, which that's why Kevin is so close to where he is, I don't see that good forward movement. And this is Kevin a year ago had a very poor forward movement, more of a downward movement. So now it's like he needs to kind of find a little common ground between those two and move a little bit more down with that forward movement. But I really like his forward movement. And the drive leg looks good except for the flexion. So that would be one of the first performance potential parameters, would be getting more flexion in that drive leg knee. So then we could generate more leg force through our drive. So let's look at his leg drive. Okay. So he opens front foot, and you can see he's opening front foot, and he's a little late with the leg drive. I would like to see the leg drive or the ankle already starting to kick. So it's kicking a little late. So he's hitting front foot, and he's still in the rubber. He's not in full triple extension, or he isn't able to push force through or drive that hip through into front foot strike, which is going to be another performance issue. So we need more leg drive, which ultimately would have been supported with more flexion. He's not fully extended right, so the full extension would be in the hip flexor. We can see that hip flexor is still not an extension. If the hip pushed through, then the hip would be in full extension, and the hips would be more open at this point too. So the performance potential would be getting the leg drive, triple extension a little bit. I wouldn't say started earlier. Well, yeah, I wouldn't say started earlier. It just needs to start it with more force production coming through it, more power through it. A little bit more burst of speed is what we need to see with it, which is all indicated in force production going into front foot. Okay, and that's creating late hip rotation. So we're hitting front foot, hips are completely closed. We know being more high velocity at front foot, these hips would be already well into rotation at this point, so he's a little late there. All right, so if we go into how he moves into separation as we move in from the stride phase to our throwing phase, we see once those hips do come through, I'd say about right there. I hate to jump down to the front leg, but you can see, look at all that knee flexion right here, that add knee flexion. That's a big no-no. We've got to prevent any lead knee flexion. That would have also supported the hips to open earlier as well. So better on both leg drives, force from both legs. Now once those hips finally get through about right here, we can see he's already into shoulder rotation, and we have not great hip to shoulder separation. And the reason he's already into shoulder rotation is because the hips were so late. If the hips were earlier, we would have still been closed and not into shoulder rotation. So shoulder rotation 2, once it initiated, we can see the head pulling way off to the side. We can see the glove side even pulling way off to the side as well. So a little bit too rotational, even though his separation is not rotational because of the linear leg drive, because of this extended, even this full stride, it's his separation is not rotational, it's more linear. So that means he has the ability to generate more coil in that hip to shoulder separation and move into more forward trunk tilt. But because he starts early trunk rotation, because of the late hip rotation, it makes him too rotational. So I hope that didn't confuse you. So late with the hips, early with the trunk, that's not a high velocity guy. High velocity guy is going to be early with the hips, late with the trunk. So if we're early with the trunk, we tend to be too rotational. And in the case of Kevin, because he doesn't get into hyperangulation, where the elbow, the shoulder, or the throwing arm gets behind the scapular plane, then he basically loses or he doesn't achieve maximum external rotation or the maximum load on the arm. At this point, you can see we have a poor load on the arm. So, and not only that, we've got poor trunk tilt is because as well. So here's another performance issue: poor trunk tilt. I would like to see him more forward here. And then I would like to see maximum external rotation on the arm all the way back, laid back into a 180 external rotation. That's really where we're trying to get to. That's the final goal. We didn't get there because of the early trunk rotation, because of the late hip rotation, and mainly because we're too rotational at this point. even though that's not what he set out to be through his leg drive. But we just failed at front foot strike. Okay, so the issues, well, we'll recap it after this. So let's go into arm action. If I go back to arm action, he timed arm cocking well into front foot. He's just going into full external rotation at front foot. That's what we want. He's got flexion in the arm. That's good to keep a faster arm movement. He's not in a high cock position here. He gets into good shoulder abduction. Just doesn't get maximum external rotation. So good arm path, not full, and that's probably why he didn't get in full internal rotation. Good arm path, just the issue on the load on the arm is the problem. And in the front leg, not only did we have lead knee flexion at front foot, which really kills hip rotation, early hip rotation, but we didn't get front leg extension before pitch release. It came late. So extension on the front leg was late before pitch release. So let's do a recap on the performance potentials. We saw where he could first make an improvement is on the leg drive, getting more flexion, and then hopefully more force out of that drive, more speed, more power to create a quicker leg drive into front foot. He's got late hip rotation because of that, so we need the hips to get through early, and we need the front legs to stabilize completely. Then that should create more separation, less rotation in the upper torso. This should push him more into forward trunk tilt and load him back into more maximum external rotation, okay, to deal with that poor external rotation, poor forward trunk tilt. And then trying to get extended before pitch release as well. And that should also support more full internal rotation of the arm, which will even generate more arm speed at the same time, also protect the arm at the same time as well. It's cool how you see it, how it's all interconnected from the red flags or the injury alerts that we look for all the way to why we're not performing at a high speed or a high ball speed. So it's all interconnected because of the kinetic chain, but it's cool to see separating it between injury and performance. So I hope this helps you get an idea of a good way to break down or evaluate a pitcher, evaluate yourself. Like I said, this comes from the 3X Pitcher Evaluation Report that you can gain access to at topvelocity.net. So I appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, please follow up with me, and wish you the best.